Now, for more in-depth discussion on this huge issue, we now connect to Henry Sokolski, Executive Director of the Nonproliferation Policy Education Center. He's now joining us through Skype. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm sure you heard about this huge news that just broke out. The leaders of South Korea and the U.S. will meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un when they make a visit to the DMZ this afternoon. But do you think their encounter can set the stage for a more in-depth discussion on denuclearization?
I don't want to sound glib, but there is no way you couldn't help but have something more detailed than a handshake. So, I mean, whether it sets the stage or not, I mean, it's pretty low bar. And I think the expectations are going to be raised, certainly by just the meeting, that surely they have to meet after having such a brief encounter. So I guess, on balance, yeah, there'll be another meeting. I think, everyone, the Americans, the South Koreans, the North Koreans, for very different reasons, want to keep the diplomatic ball in the air. And so, of course there are going to be more meetings, but whether you need to have a handshake to make that happen, I'm not so sure, but surely it makes it more likely, yeah.
Now, we've seen various developments since the Hanoi summit, including the summits between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, as well as Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. And the exchange, of course, of the personal letters between Kim and Trump, and of course, the handshake that is expected to take place at the DMZ in the coming hours. Do you now expect a possible change in Washington's FFVD stance following those warm developments?
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. Certainly what has changed is how quickly the President Trump thinks he can achieve anything, or even wants to achieve anything in a big way. I think he likes to have the diplomatic ball in the air and the sanctions on, so he can say, I'm pushing for total and complete disarmament. It's going to take time, but just watch carefully what I'm doing. South Korea, meanwhile, is very eager to have any kind of talks, even if it doesn't lead to much disarmament. And the North is kind of hoping that as long as there are talks, the argument will be, why do we need to be bracketed by American troops in the South? Surely they should go home. And so, as I say, for very different reasons, these talks serve the leaders' purposes, but the purposes are kind of at odds with one another. So we'll continue this. I mean, it's been going on for a while, and it'll go on for a while more. The question is, will the key things that each of these parties want occur? My hunch is that the North is doing better than South Korea or the Americans in this regard. I think that the logic of American presence in South Korea is a little bit lower than it was before this process started. And I think that's what the North Koreans are most eager to achieve.
One last question before I let you go. Possible differences between President Moon and Trump in denuclearization approach that weren't revealed to the public?
Yeah, I don't think it's too mysterious. I think President Moon is more inclined to get the sanctions taken down as a way to make sure that there are more talks. And then I think he's less inclined to be a stickler on the specifics of the nuclear disarmament. Whereas I think the president, both for congressional and political reasons at home, may be willing to let the talks go on longer and not have a deadline. But he'll try to claim that the sanctions are things that we need to have to leverage some greater progress on actual physical disarmament moves by the North. What remains unclear to me is why the North would take much action to disarm. They might do a little to keep the talks going, but in general, I think material is still being made in the North that's usable for nuclear weapons. And they seem to be making some progress on their missiles with very few tests. So we'll have to see how this unfolds, but I'm sure there are going to be more talks. That I am confident of.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Sokolski, for your insights today.